welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Nonprofit Show. We have who I'm going to call friend of the show, Emily Kelly, back with us. She's a national accounts manager at Bloomerang, and she's going to be talking to us about how to raise more money, but online. And that's where we need to really be focusing. So, Emily, I'm really excited to learn from you today because I feel like this is one of those elusive things. Not everybody in the nonprofit sector has fully leaned in, shockingly. Do you
Right.
think that's fair?
That's a fair assessment.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think you're going to kick us in the behind today to get us all moving in that direction so that we can be raising more money and doing it online and doing it efficiently. You know, who's really efficient with us day in and day out as our supporters are these amazing companies that stand with us each and every day. We've done nearly 1,400 episodes and we're now in our 6th year. And most all of these folks have been with us since day one. They include Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, JMT Consulting, Interim Executives Academy, Your Part-Time Controller, Fundraisers Friday, and our newest member, Holdings for Good. Super excited to have them on. They are a bank just for nonprofits. So yay team. This is somebody we need, and you're going to get to learn more about them. I'm Julia C. Patrick, CEO of the American Nonprofit Academy. But more importantly, I'm here with Emily Kelly. She's a national accounts manager with our friends over at Bloomerang. Okay, I'm putting you in the hot seat. What does a national accounts manager do, Emily?
Oh, what do we not do? No, I'm joking. I love what I do. I feel like there's just not a better role on this planet better suited for me. My original and former lifetime in college, I went to school to be a marriage and family therapist. So I'm always like intrigued by relationships and building relationships and networking and bridging gaps together and bringing people together and helping people be better and fixing and doing. So with my role currently, I get to work with, oh my gosh, thousands of nonprofits across the country, including national accounts such as like Habitat for Humanity, Boys and Girls Clubs, Humane Societies, so on and so forth. And I travel the country and I get to meet individuals of all roles in all of these organizations and how they can be better fundraisers, how they can make their nonprofits grow and establish strong relationships with Bloomerang and them so that they're just better fundraisers. I love it so much.
Okay, so I swear to God, I think you just said the perfect thing about why I love my work. I think it's just fascinating that you talked about, the cornerstone of relationships and people, helping them to navigate those fragilities and
Mhm.
that stress. I love your therapy background. Hello. I feel like I do that every day, but I'm not, I'm not licensed or trained to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Really? Oh, wow. That's like super kooky that you would say that. Because yeah, what a great place to be in this planet to see people doing great work, different
Right.
work, important
Right.
work, and then
Important work.
being able to help them. That's
And
super cool.
I started this role as like, I've done a lot of things in my life and I've been in the nonprofit world. I've been in the for-profit world. I've been in advertising, I've been all kinds of things. But I'm like, I need a job that when I put my head on my pillow at night, I can feel good about what I do and just feel like I'm making an impact. And then I kind of put that aside and I'm like, these are the folks making the impact. I'm just along for the ride. But I treasure it. I adore it. There's not a day that goes by that I'm not thankful for it.
Well, don't you think that it's like one of those blessings to be able to help people that have a mission, that know what they want to do, that can deliver programming, and they can really make a difference. They just need help on the backside,
Exactly.
and I think that's what's so magical about how we can bring people in, especially experts like you, to help us realize, we're not going to tell you how to run the animal shelter or the hospice, group, but we're going to help you to do the back end stuff so that you can do more with your programming. And so really exciting. Well, I love that I asked that question because that just sets it up. So we're talking about online giving. Let's start off with some best practices as just a general course so that then we can continue on this conversation. Because is like we said in the green room, this is not a nice to have. This is a need to have, right?
Right. Absolutely. We've done a lot of really interesting things at Boomerang. One thing being we do these donor experience reports. And so when I'm doing different speaking engagements across the country, like they ask me all the time, what are best practices? And what's really fascinating that I found with this study, and all of us have found that the very first thing that I really like to hone in on and emphasize is that regardless if you're, hoping to raise money online, the first thing you need to do if you are is make sure that donation button works, because you would be surprised how many times different organizations we go when we're doing these studies and the button just doesn't even work. So I'm always like, take that nonprofit hat off, go to your website and just click it. Does it work, or is it just hovering? What's happening? And then while you have that nonprofit hat off, look at that button, look at that website and think, if I were to take me out of this role and I was my mom or my sister or my friend or whomever else, would I be compelled to give to this page, or does it look like some creepy TikTok thing that our kids send us? What is this? Where's my money going? Is it compelling? Is it pulling at my heartstrings a little bit? So those are the two things that I emphasize the most, like really kind of take your nonprofit hat off and look at it as a consumer, as a donor, and wonder, would you be compelled to give to that? And does it work? Those are the two first things that I really like to emphasize.
Do you think that I keep hearing, and I've heard this for a while, that the donate button should always be in red with white lettering, and it should be on the upper right hand side of the screen? Any thoughts on that, or is that just
That's interesting. I see it in all colors just because of branding and marketing, and people have their things that they have to go by. So I'm definitely not a marketing expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I do know the bigger the button, and if it's at the top of the page and if people aren't having to go hunting and gathering for that donate button, make it as easy as possible and easy on the eye for them to see it at the top of your page.
okay? Okay, yeah. It's really an interesting thing is I feel like I hear from nonprofits that are like, oh, that's too in your face. We'll put a tab where they can go. And I'm always like, people are working off their phones. You work in an office where you're on your laptop, or maybe you're a desktop with a big screen. This is not the way the majority of our donors, our new donors, are finding it or looking at us, I should say, right? So you've
Right.
got to make this really achievable. It's kind of an interesting thing.
It's not in your face if someone's really, like, passionate about your organization. They're going there for a reason. So maybe they need it in their face because we're all limited on time. They want to know how they can give and get on to the next soccer practice or next Zoom meeting or whatever the case may be. So make it in their face. And then that way they can make their donation, and both of you can benefit from it being very accessible.
I love that. What are some other best practices before we move on and talk more about the nuts and bolts of this? What are some other things that you've seen that seem to be putting a nonprofit in a much better position?
Oh, absolutely. Without question, making sure you have different methods of payment available. So
Okay.
you're not just debit card, you're not just credit card. Are you using Venmo? Are you using ACH? Are you, just try to stay away from PayPal. That's like, you're not going to have a whole lot of options there with that. But as long as you're giving different options, like I always say, like Amazon makes it as easy as can be for all of us, right? We've got our button there, we're ready to go, boom, and we get our product the next day. So if we can use Apple Pay, Google Payment, whatever it takes, so we don't have to go down to our car, get our purse,
Mhm.
and get distracted by the next thing, make it as easy as possible with as many functions to give financially as possible.
While we're on that topic, and I'm thrilled that you brought that up, what are you seeing with DAF payments and actual buttons that are just for DAF transfers? Are you seeing that come forward more, or do you have any thoughts on that?
I'm not seeing it everywhere. If it's an option or if it's available to your organization, then absolutely make that another thing that's available. But as far as using just like Apple Pay, that is a huge one. And then like Venmo, it's great for the different demographics because people are always like, how do I appeal to a younger generation? Or how do I appeal to this generation? Because they're all kind of paying differently, right? So if you want to make sure that you're appealing to all the different demographics, make sure that you have all the different methods of payment.
Wow. You know what? I would not have thought of Venmo or Zelle. I'm like really shocked by that. Um, because to me, when I hear that, that's like a one-time thing. And
Mhm.
that's not necessarily a way to pull somebody in, but yet that's the wrong mindset, which we'll talk about next. Because we need to be thinking about what you just said. There's so many different demographics given, that we're dealing with right now. Most demographers will say this is like one of the few times in the history of our country we have four different demographics
Sure.
working,
Sure.
not just living, but working. So that's changed things. So let's move on to that next piece of this. And how can there be a giver experience? Because a lot of times we talk about that with more in the context of events or community walks or activities, tours. We don't necessarily talk about this with online giving. What are you
Right.
seeing?
It's the old adage like work smarter, not harder, right? So whenever you're creating these donation pages, or if you're creating an acknowledgement after the donation has been made, make it easy on yourself. Because most of us, as we know, in this nonprofit land that we're in, like everybody's doing the job of 50 people. So
Yeah.
no one has any extra time to do a lot of anything additional. So when you're creating that messaging, maybe tweak it just a little bit. And the easiest way to tweak that is doing some segmentation in whatever donor management system that you're using. So perhaps you're sending a specific acknowledgement to, someone who gives $100 or more, or $1,000 or more, however you're going to segment that information, or maybe you're just sending it to volunteers, perhaps. But then that way they feel a little bit more heard and seen versus just a blanket acknowledgement is just really important. So segmentation is something that we really, really emphasize on as well, because it's going to make those donors feel that you're listening to them, you're understanding how they want to communicate with you, you're understanding what they want to hear from you. So those are just some things that are really important to keep that relationship.
So basically, as we're going through this concept, um, understanding that this donor is a different situation, but yet in so many ways it's the same. We need to be grateful and thankful and track them back through what the impact is going to be. Is that what I hear you saying?
Absolutely.
Yeah, really, really interesting. Do you feel that there's a difference, or are you leaning towards more phone communications or text or email? Like, what are you seeing out there in relationship to this giving experience that you're going to get, which is a little different if you've made an online donation?
I think all communication is important. Again, if we want to go all the way back to that therapy background, like if you don't have communication, you don't have anything, right? So if someone isn't giving to you, it's probably because you're not communicating with them. If someone doesn't have a receipt or an acknowledgement, or they don't know what events are coming up, or they don't know how to volunteer, it's probably because you're not communicating with them. So communication is absolutely key with all of this. I'm not one to say that text is better than email, better than phone, and better than a Zoom call, or whatever the case may be, because communication is communication. But again, that's when that communication with your supporters comes into play really strong. So you're understanding this person doesn't want you to text them. They prefer email, or they prefer a phone call over X, Y, or Z. I'm seeing all of it. But what I really am kind of emphasizing as I'm traveling across the country here is that we all are getting text messages, right? I bet I've 15 today alone, from a
Oh,
prescription that's ready. Soccer practice was canceled. It's back to school week. I need to get glue sticks for my elementary school kid. Like, I have text galore, and it's overwhelming at times. And then of course, all of us have a gazillion emails every day, and some are junk and some are important. But the phone call is like this old thing that's kind of coming back. And we all kind of look at our phones and think, oh my God, I don't know that number. I'm not answering that. Who is that? But then now technology will kind of, tweak that a little bit and say, maybe it's so and so. But
Right,
that's always my favorite, might be so and so.
right,
Or perhaps the organization is tied to that phone number and maybe they're not going to answer it. They might not answer it, but you can leave a voicemail. And when you
right.
leave the voicemail with most modern phones now, it will transcribe and
Yeah.
they're probably going to read it like a text message. And if I gave $100 to an organization and someone called me and, you know, personally thanked me, that's going to stick out to me a little bit more than a text or an email, just because it's a little bit of an extra effort. And we're learning that a phone call to a new donor is, if you do that within 24 to 48 hours, that donor is 4 times more likely to give again. So phone calls can be really, really important and really effective.
Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit more because that elusive phone call. I mean, when you said the phone rings and you're like, who's calling me? I mean, that's me. That's Julia Patrick. I'm like, what? Who's calling? And yeah, if I don't know who it is, I don't engage with it.
Right.
Um, but yet I do look at that transcription of the message.
Mhm.
Um, Talk to us about what you're seeing really successful organizations do. Are they using volunteers? Are they using clients? Is it scripted out? Or is it more organic? What's your sense of what's working with these thank you calls?
I'm seeing a little bit of everything. Engaging your board, if at all possible, is really
Uh,
effective. That's going to make that donor even that much more prone to give. That we're seeing that statistic. So again, everyone's got a million things going on, right? So if you can delegate your board and be like, hey, you take 5 phone calls, you take five, you take five, and leave those messages. I have an organization that came up to me after a speaking session one day and she said, I tried this, because I always say, try it. And if it doesn't work, you can come back and yell at me. But I knock on wood, I haven't had anybody come back and yell at me yet. But one gal said she tried it out and then her retention over the year went up like 18% just by doing these phone calls.
yeah. I have found that as a board member, when you get to do the thanking calls, it actually sparks more engagement from the board member as well. It's really cool to hear somebody say, "Oh wow, okay, great," or or like have gratitude for the gratitude moment that you're giving. I mean, I think
Right.
we forget that sometimes board members need a spark as well.
Right. You're always kind of just caught up in the financials or caught up in, the meetings or whatever. But whenever you can actually get someone who supports the organization on the phone, it can remind you like, oh yeah, this is why I'm here. This is why I wanted to be on this board. This is what this organization is all about. And it kind of, it really activates a lot of things, like with storytelling, how important that is. And then maybe you get on the phone and you start sharing stories together. So not only does the donor tell you a story and then you go off and tell other people and they're going to support the organization, but maybe that board member has a story to share also, which could create more donors, or that donor could then tell their friend or family, and it's just going to spark it on both sides.
Right. I was meeting with somebody for lunch last week, and she was telling me the story about her mother made a $50 donation for the first time to an organization that supports an issue that one of this woman's grandchildren has.
Mhm.
So $50, not a lot, but just it was, something that she thought it would be like a one and done. And she got four touches that were physical, one from a board member, one from a staff member, one from a client, and then one from the development team. And it was nothing more than a thank you. It wasn't a solicitation to attend anything, take a tour. I mean, it was just a thank you.
Yeah.
And when the daughter came to meet with her mom, the mother said, I think I'd like to talk about maybe, moving them into my estate planning. And I
Wow.
thought, I was just like, the power of human connectivity, going back to your therapy work and,
Yeah.
and communication. And it was such a good reminder for me because I think a lot of times we think that only like the grand gift is going to really have the impact. Whereas they've just created something, a relationship here that's going to really be profound.
Yeah, we don't know what people are capable of. They may give 50, but they're capable of 50,000. But maybe you need to treat that as such so that maybe you kind of continue that relationship so that happens. Or maybe they don't have that capability, but they know somebody that does. And if they're inspired by how grateful you are, then that could trigger that somewhere else. I mean, I have 3 children. The power of please and thank you has been rooted in my kids since they could speak. I was raised by Southern women, and that's just what you do. And the power of please, the power of thank you is so much more powerful than anything else. And it's very simple. It's just one of those very simple things that it's in the grand scheme of things, we're all busy. And sometimes the simple things are the hardest. But if
Yeah,
you can start with that acknowledgement, it can move mountains for you.
absolutely. Um, so what I hear you saying before we move on is that I think so often we're caught up in the mechanization of a letter or an email or a text or whatever that acknowledges what has happened. But I really have learned from you today that it's that human connection and something as simple as a phone call. We might need to be moving that up and really engaging more in that.
Well, and kind of as we were talking at before, when we were in COVID and all these other things,
Yeah.
like we don't have that human connection like we used to. So if we can build that up a little bit more, it just resonates a lot stronger with folks versus just a quick one-off text message. It doesn't have the same meaning, I don't feel like. And I'm seeing the power of that as I'm chatting with people across the country.
So let's talk a little bit more about that because we have like an online giving thank you process that we should be, for lack of a better word, scripted out. You're advising us to do it. What's the time frame?
Well, if you can make that phone call to a first time donor within 24 to 48 hours, they're 4 times more likely. Now, I know within 24 hours, sometimes that's very challenging. That's the research. But, if you could just do it within a week's time, because you know how we all are, we're all busy and we're on to the next thing. And like, did I donate to something? Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. But if you keep that fresh and top of mind for folks, then it's just going to be that more, it'll resonate that much stronger for the next time when they're being asked for a donation. Like, well, I'm going to give to X organization because they actually remembered me and acknowledged me versus so and so. Like, did I get an invoice for that? I don't even remember. So
Right.
just making that personal connection is so important.
What are your thoughts on the aspect of the gift acknowledgement? I mean, for so long we've done that in print form. It's been mailed. For obviously for larger donations, this is a paper trail that is going to be used for tracking and possibly have tax implications, all of that. But if you're getting an online donation, how do you navigate that piece that in the past was all done through snail mail?
Right. I think, again, this kind of goes to understanding what communication methods that your donors want to have. Like, do they want to receive emails? Do they not? And be very, very mindful of that. Do they want a paper receipt? Maybe after they've made a donation, ask them. Make that your opportunity when you pick up the phone call. Like, hey, is this important to you? Would you like to have this on paper? I'm happy to send that to you. Or would you prefer to have that digitally? And then just very small things like that are just going to create that connection with people like, wow, this person really cares. It's not just some one-off thing. Again, it's like a lot of times we see some of these acknowledgments look like we just bought a set of tires or something. And it's like,
Yes,
what is this? Right.
yes,
So if we are
yeah.
really being mindful about who is giving to us and how they want to receive that information, it's really important. At the end of the day, for our taxes, we all need it on some kind of paper, whether it's digital or whatnot. But the acknowledgement is different than a receipt. So making sure that you're personalizing things. Dear, Bob, thank you for your $100 donation on August the 13th, blah, 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 blah. It's going to this particular fund that you designated. And also in memory of your mother, we will follow up with you in 30 days and XYZ. So just making it as personal as possible.
You've mentioned several times, and I want to jump back to this about communicating with your donors, whether they be, new or existing, about how they want to be communicated with. Do they want to receive texts, email, snail mail, phone calls, whatever? How and when and where do you do that?
Well, That's an interesting question. I think with especially with a new donor, if you're picking up the phone and you're making those phone calls, that's a great time to do it. I had somebody tell me that they do it by birthdays. So if they have people's birthdays in, their database or wherever they keep it, like, all right, so it's August. So we're going to make sure this is the time we're going to reach out to everybody. Happy birthday. And hey, by the way, what's your preferred communication method? We just want to make sure that we have everything updated properly. And if you're keeping any other kind of personal notes, like I know you got a puppy last year or you had a grandbaby last year, it's just a way to make sure you take that extra note and make sure you're understanding your donors better.
So you see this as something that is more of a personal engagement and not just something that's like on the form that you use when you're making your first online donation?
Whatever you can do, right?
Okay.
So if on your form, you do have that capacity to say, what's your preferred method of communication? And it'll pop up in your database.
Okay.
Wonderful. Maybe that changes in a year's time.
Yeah.
So maybe in a year you follow up and say, hey, is this still your email address? Is this still your phone number? Is this still how you want to be communicated with? And I think folks really appreciate that you take that extra effort to understand them.
Mm-hmm. This is going to seem like a total off the wall question to ask you. But, when I think of, as we said in the very beginning of the show today, I hear the word Venmo, and I think this is like a one-shot thing. Somebody hears about something, somebody's moved by something they see on TV or they read or they see it online. How is it that we ask permission, or maybe we don't, about can we connect with you again, or is this a one-time donation? Do you know what I'm saying here? Because
Yeah.
it's the difference between like starting a relationship and building it, or acknowledging that this is just a one-time thing. Is that ever appropriate, just to say, yeah, we're acknowledging this is a one-time thing, and we're not going to waste everybody's time and money on trying to keep building?
It's a really interesting question. I've never been asked that before, so I'm not going to pretend like I'm an expert on that question in particular. However, just in my own experience, I feel like, what's the old adage, like, do it now and then ask for forgiveness later.
Yep.
It's not going to hurt to ask again, because maybe they will. But if they don't, maybe they'll let you know. And I think that's really important in segmentation too, and communication. Whenever you're looking at like you gave last year, but not this year, and you reach out to them and you just simply ask them why. Like, is there a reason why that you no longer want to give to us? And we totally understand, but what is that? And sometimes it's like, oh, I just forgot about you. Oh,
Right.
got busy. Oh, you didn't communicate with me. And then you realize like, oh, well, that's on me. You could leave a space on your donation page where if you wanted to have any notes pulled into your system about that particular individual. But, I just feel like it never hurts to ask.
Yeah. I appreciate you saying that, because I feel like there are movements that we have around a day or an activity or an anniversary. I mean, around death, people that say don't send flowers, but make a donation to XYZ. I mean, there are things where it's like a one and done mentality. And I like that you kind of gave us permission, or like I said, kicked us a little bit in the rear to say, no, if this is a point of entry, it's a point of entry, and let's try and figure this out. It's always great to have, as I say, a friend of the show come on. Emily Kelly, you're great. I hope if you're out and about and you get to an opportunity to hear Emily speak or connect with her, the therapy background is just like spoke to me, Emily.
Come find me after the show, or we'll be for coffee or a glass of wine. You can tell me all your problems. We'll work it out. I definitely, that's just, what do people like? I'm the bone collector my whole life, like people strike up conversations with me in the grocery store, and that's just, it's my nature, and I enjoy it so much. So I'm happy to talk shop or otherwise anytime.
I love it. Well, Emily Kelly, she is the National Accounts Manager over at Bloomerang, and you can learn more about what Bloomerang is doing at bloomerang.com. One of the things, Emily, that I love about your organization is that you're tremendous thought leaders, but you share and you have no paywall. You don't have to be a client of Bloomerang to get access and to get this amazing information. So it is out there. They've done the heavy lifting for you. And I just think it's such an important resource, no matter where you are in the trajectory of your journey with your nonprofit. It's really a resource you cannot uh, disengage from. Or, I mean, you've got to put this in your bag of tricks, right? I just think it's an amazing, amazing thing to be able to go and find all this resource. And hint, hint, this is not something you can just like, oh, I have an extra 15 minutes and take a look at. You need to use it as a discipline to go in and read their research and their white papers and watch their streaming content, because it really is quite remarkable. You know, what's quite remarkable are all of our presenting sponsors, including Bloomerang, and they are also American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, JMT Consulting, Interim Executives Academy, Your Part-Time Controller, Fundraisers Friday, and Holdings for Good. Wow. Okay, Emily, I'm like recommitted every day. I get a little bit more energized from somewhere else, but I loved how you started this off, in that it's the relationship.
It's all about relationships,
Yeah.
all of it.
All right. Super powerful. Well, hey, as we end each and every episode of the Nonprofit Show, we leave with this message: stay well so you can do well. Thanks, everyone. See you again.